The wind howled across the barren plains of Nexus 6 as Jack Preston checked his oxygen levels for the third time that hour. The red warning light on his suit's wrist panel kept blinking, reminding him that he was down to his last 4 hours of breathable air. He should have turned back already. Any reasonable scientist would have. But Jack had never been what his supervisors called reasonable. Just a little farther, he muttered to himself, his boots crunching against the strange, blue-tinted soil as he climbed another ridge. Jack was a xenobiologist, a scientist who studied alien life forms. For 3 years, he had worked at the human research base called Horizon 9, while the other 28 scientists spent their days safely collecting plant samples near the base. Jack always wanted to see what was beyond the next hill. The Galactic Alliance, which controlled all human space travel, had strict rules about Nexus 6. The northern region was completely off-limits. They called it the Dead Zone because 3 scout ships sent there had never returned. 27 crew members lost. The official reports labeled it as extreme environmental hazards, but Jack didn't believe that explanation. Something was up there. Something alive. For months, Jack's sensors had picked up strange energy patterns coming from the Dead Zone. These patterns pulsed in regular ways, too regular to be random weather or geological activity. When he showed his findings to Susan, the base commander, she had simply frowned. "The Dead Zone is forbidden, Preston." End of discussion. Jack waited until the monthly supply ship left before borrowing one of the small scout shuttles. He had planned to be back before anyone noticed, but this was his 5th secret trip, and each time he went a little farther north. Today, he had finally found something. Rising from the flat wasteland was a massive formation of crystals. They weren't like any crystals Jack had seen before. These were deep purple, almost black, and they seemed to hum with energy. His scanner showed readings. That made no sense. The crystals somehow absorbed heat during the day and released it at night. Perfect natural shelter, Jack said as he collected samples. This could change everything we know about survival structures on harsh worlds. He was so focused on his work that he didn't notice the dark clouds gathering overhead until the first drops of acid rain began to fall, sizzling against his protective suit. No. Jack sprinted back to his shuttle, but it was too late. A lightning bolt struck nearby, and the electromagnetic pulse fried his shuttle's navigation system. When he tried to start the engines, they made a horrible grinding noise before falling silent. Jack was stranded in the most dangerous region of Nexus 6, with night coming and temperatures that would soon drop to -70 degrees. Working. Quickly, he set up his emergency shelter, a small dome that used the shuttle's backup power to generate heat. It would keep him alive for maybe 12 hours. After that, Jack tried not to think about after that. As darkness fell, the temperature plummeted just as the weather reports had predicted. Inside his tiny shelter, Jack recorded what might be his final log entry. "This is xenobiologist Jack Preston, day 438 on Nexus 6. If anyone finds this, the crystal formations at these coordinates are unlike anything in Alliance records. They appear to be artificially created, possibly by intelligent life forms. I believe." A shadow fell across the transparent dome of his shelter. At first, Jack thought it was just clouds blocking the 3 moons of Nexus 6. Then he saw it move. Something huge was circling his shelter. Jack fumbled for his light, pointing it outside. What he saw made his blood freeze colder than the air outside. It was a Nyx stalker, the deadliest predator ever encountered by humans. 12 feet tall with a body covered in natural armor stronger than spaceship hulls. Its 6 limbs ended in claws that could slice through metal. 2 rows of eyes glowed green in the darkness. Every Alliance report described them as mindless, killing machines that attacked on sight. This was why the Dead Zone was forbidden. This was what had killed those scout ships. Jack knew he should shut off his light and hope the creature went away. Instead, he kept watching it, his scientists, curiosity overriding his fear. The stalker wasn't attacking. It was inspecting his shelter, moving around it in careful, deliberate patterns. Every few seconds, it would make clicking sounds and emit pulses that made Jack's instruments go crazy. It's communicating, Jack whispered, reaching for his universal translator. The device was designed to analyze unknown languages and find patterns. It wasn't meant for non-humanoid species, but Jack had modified his to pick up a wider range of sounds. For 3 hours, the stalker circled while Jack recorded every sound and movement. The translator began to identify patterns, specific clicks that repeated, pulses that came in sequences. By the 4th hour, Jack's shelter was failing. The temperature inside had dropped to just above freezing, and the power was almost gone. Without heat, he would die within an hour. That's when the translator beeped. "Analysis complete," the mechanical voice announced. "Communication pattern identified with 42% confidence." Jack stared at the translated words on his screen. "Why you here? Danger night. Death, cold." His hands shaking from both cold and excitement, Jack typed a response and let the translator convert it to clicks and pulses, which he played through his shelter's external speaker. "I am lost. My ship broken. I study this place." The stalker went completely still. Then it moved closer to the dome, those green eyes staring directly at Jack. The next message came through clearer. "You study, not hunt, not take. I only study, I learn, I don't hurt anything." There was a long pause. Jack's temperature warning beeped. His core body temperature was dropping dangerously. He had maybe 20 minutes before hypothermia set in. The stalker suddenly moved to the entrance of the shelter and began digging at the sealed doorway. Jack had a choice: stay inside and freeze to death, or open the door to the most dangerous predator known to humans. Science had always been about taking risks. Jack unsealed the door. The rush of freezing air made him gasp, but what happened next shocked him even more. The stalker didn't attack. Instead, it extended one of its limbs toward Jack, not with claws extended, but with something clutched in what Jack now realized was actually a hand with opposable digits. It was offering him a crystal, similar to the formation he'd been studying, but smaller. As soon as Jack took it, the crystal began to glow with warmth. The translator picked up more clicks. "Follow. Safe place." Jack should have been terrified. Every Alliance protocol said to avoid these creatures at all costs. But something told him this was different. This wasn't a mindless predator. This was someone intelligent. "My name is Jack," he said, pointing to himself. The stalker made a sound unlike the others, almost like a purr. "Vexa," came the translated response. By the time the 3 moons of Nexus 6 reached their highest point, Jack Preston had done something no human had ever done before. He had made first contact with a species the Galactic Alliance had wrongly labeled as mindless killers for decades. And now he was following Vexa through the frozen wasteland, holding a crystal that somehow kept him warm, toward what she called home. The greatest discovery in human history had begun with a simple act: choosing understanding over fear. The morning sun shone through the windows of Horizon 9 as the emergency security team dragged Jack through the main doors. He had been gone for 3 days. 3 days that had changed everything he thought he knew about Nexus 6. "Let go of me," Jack struggled against the guards. "You don't understand what I found." Director Susan Kelly stood in the center of the command room, her face red with anger. Behind her, a wall screen showed the rescue team's footage of finding Jack at the edge of the dead zone, alone and babbling about friendly predators. "Lock him in medical containment," Susan ordered. "Full decontamination and psych evaluation." The guards pulled Jack toward the medical wing, but he managed to break free, racing to the main computer terminal. Before they could stop him, he plugged in his data device. "Look!" he shouted as images filled the screens around the room. "Look at what I recorded." The room fell silent as everyone stared at the footage. There was Jack, following a massive Nyx stalker into a cave system filled with glowing crystals. The stalker was not attacking. It was leading him, stopping to make sure he kept up. Susan stepped closer to the screen, her eyes wide. "This has to be fake." "It's not fake," Jack said as the guards grabbed him again. "Her name is Vexa. She saved my life." 4 hours later, Jack sat in the medical containment room. a force field separating him from Susan and the base's chief medical officer, Dr. Alan Wright. "Your medical scans are normal," Dr. Wright said, looking confused. "No signs of poisoning, mind-altering substances, or brain damage. Physically, you're fine." "Because I'm not crazy," Jack replied. "The Knicks aren't what we think they are." Susan paced back and forth. "You broke 17 separate safety protocols. You stole a shuttle. You entered the dead zone 5 times without authorization. You made unauthorized contact with a deadly species. Give me one good reason why I shouldn't ship you back to Earth for court-martial." Jack leaned forward. "Because everything we know about this planet is wrong. The Knicks aren't mindless animals. They're intelligent. They have a society, language, art, and history. The crystals, they're not natural formations, they're buildings. Vexa is what they call a memory keeper, like a scholar or historian." "And why would this scholar help you?" Susan demanded. "Because they've been watching us since we arrived," Jack explained. "They know we're not like the others." "What others?" Jack took a deep breath. "The Knicks have encountered 17 different alien species throughout their history. Most tried to kill them on sight. They've been defending themselves all this time." Susan turned to leave. "I've heard enough. We're sending a full report to Alliance Command." "Wait," Jack called after her. "Vexa wants to meet you. All of you, officially. She can come here to the base." Susan stopped at the door. "You expect me to invite a Knicks stalker into our base? The same creatures that killed 3 scout ships and 27 crew members?" "They didn't attack those ships," Jack said quietly. "The ships landed on their sacred grounds, what they call the sleeping place of ancestors. It would be like someone landing a ship in the middle of Arlington Cemetery. They were defending their dead." From the back of the room, a voice spoke up. "I believe him." Everyone turned to see Diane Foster, the base's xenopsychologist. She had been silently observing from the corner. "The footage shows clear signs of intelligence and social behavior," Diane said, stepping forward. "The way the creature moves, how it adjusts its pace for Jack, the offering of the crystal as a heat source. These aren't the actions of a mindless predator." Over the next 2 days, Diane spent hours reviewing Jack's data and recordings. She brought her findings to Susan, who reluctantly agreed to listen. "The translation patterns are consistent with a developed language," Diane explained. "And look at this scan of the crystal Jack brought back." The scan showed complex patterns etched inside the crystal, invisible to the naked eye. "It's a storage device," Diane said. "It contains information, mathematical equations, star charts, and what appears to be historical records." Susan frowned. "Even if you're right, I can't authorize contact without approval from Alliance Command. By the time they respond, we could miss this opportunity," Jack argued. "Vexa trusts me. She's waiting for a signal that it's safe to approach the base." After hours of debate, Susan made her decision. "One meeting, heavily controlled, maximum security, and if anything goes wrong, I'll personally make sure both of you spend the rest of your lives in a prison colony." The next morning, the entire base was on high alert. Armed guards lined the perimeter as Jack stood at the north gate, holding. A signal light pointed toward the distant hills. "Are you sure about this?" Diane asked, standing beside him. "Trust me," Jack replied, activating the light in a pattern of 3 long flashes, followed by 2 short ones. For 20 minutes, nothing happened. The guards grew restless. Susan checked her watch repeatedly. "This was a waste of—" she began, but stopped when a guard shouted. "Movement, 3 o'clock." Everyone turned to see a dark shape approaching across the blue plains. It moved with surprising grace for something so large. As it got closer, they could see it was carrying something. "Hold your fire!" Jack shouted, as the guards raised their weapons. The Knicks stalker stopped 30 yards from the gate. Even from that distance, its massive size was intimidating. 12 feet tall, with armor-plated skin that shimmered in the sunlight. Its green eyes seemed to take in everything at once. Slowly, deliberately, it placed a large object on the ground. A crystal much bigger than the one it had given Jack, at least 3 feet tall. Then it backed away several steps and made a series of clicking sounds. Jack's translator beeped. Peace offering, history of necks, proof of truth. The base's sensors scanned the crystal from a distance. No explosives or biological agents detected, a technician reported. Jack looked at Susan. Let me go out there? Absolutely not, she replied. Then let her come in, Jack insisted. She's taking all the risk here. She came alone, unarmed, with a gift. After a tense moment of consideration, Susan nodded. Open the small personnel gate. Maximum security protocol. The tiny side gate opened, and Jack spoke into his translator. The device converted his words into clicks and pulses. You can come closer, Vexa. Slowly. The Nyx stalker, Vexa, approached with careful, measured steps. The guards tightened their grips on their weapons. When she reached the crystal, Vexa made a strange gesture, touching her head and then extending her front limb toward them. It's a greeting, Diane whispered, a sign of respect. What happened next would be recorded in Alliance history forever. Jack stepped through the gate, walked straight up to the most feared predator in known space, and returned the gesture. Then together they carried the crystal inside the human base. Later that day, as Diane studied the crystal in the lab, her face grew more amazed by the minute. This contains their entire history, she said. Thousands of years of records all stored in crystal matrices. Their technology isn't metal and circuits like ours. It's entirely biological and crystalline. Jack nodded. That's what I've been trying to explain. The Nyx aren't just intelligent, they're advanced, but in ways completely different from us. Susan, who had been silently watching, finally spoke. Why us? Why now? If they've met 17 other species, why choose humans to finally communicate with? Jack smiled. Vexa told me. We're the first ones who ever tried to talk instead of shoot. 2 weeks after Vexa's visit to Horizon 9, the news had spread across human space. Jack Preston's face was on every screen, and his name was spoken in every conversation. Some called him a hero, others called him a traitor. In the grand meeting, hall of the Galactic Alliance headquarters on Earth, Admiral Frank Hayes slammed his fist on the table. This is madness, he shouted to the gathered council members. Preston has been compromised. These creatures are playing us. The 24 council members shifted uncomfortably in their seats. On the large screen before them, images of Vexa meeting with Jack played on repeat. Even in this controlled setting, the Nyx stalker looked terrifying. Admiral Hayes, said Counselor Maria Lopez, the evidence suggests these beings are intelligent and peaceful. They've made no aggressive moves. In 2 weeks, Hayes scoffed. Peaceful? 3 of our ships destroyed. 27 crew members dead. And now we're supposed to believe they want to be friends? The ships landed on their burial grounds, said Counselor Ben Patel. Preston's report indicates they were defending sacred sites. Preston's report? Hayes laughed bitterly. Let me tell you about these creatures. They evolved as ambush predators. Their brain chemistry produces pheromones designed specifically to lure intelligent prey into a false sense of security. That's not my opinion. That's from our own xenobiology studies. Back on Nexus 6, Jack was unaware of the storm brewing on Earth. For 8 days straight, he had been visiting the Nyx settlement with Diane and a small research team. The huge crystal structures they had once thought were natural formations were actually buildings, homes, gathering places, and record halls. Today, Vexa was leading them deeper than they had ever gone before, into a massive underground chamber beneath the largest crystal. This special place, Vexa's clicks translated through Jack's device. Home of Old Ones. The chamber was enormous, at least 100 feet high. The walls were covered in crystal panels that glowed with soft blue light. In the center stood something that made Jack freeze in his tracks. It was a machine, but unlike any human machine. It looked part mechanical, part biological, with crystal components that pulsed with energy. Around it, 5 other Nyx worked, adjusting crystals and monitoring energy flows. What is this? Jack asked. Protection, Vexa replied. From danger that comes. Before Jack could ask more questions, his communication device beeped. It was an emergency message from Susan. Preston, get back to base immediately. Alliance fleet. Inbound. Admiral Hayes is leading them. Jack looked at Diane, whose face had gone pale. "This isn't good," she said. "What's happening?" Jack asked Vexa, who seemed to sense their distress. Vexa moved to a crystal panel and placed her limb against it. The panel glowed brighter, and an image appeared, a star map of the Nexus system. On the outer edge, a faint dot pulsed. "Bad thing. Comes," Vexa clicked. "Not your ships. Different. Old enemy." At that moment, the ground shook with a distant boom. Jack's device beeped again. "Hayes has begun orbital bombardment of the northern zone." Susan's voice was tight with fear. "Get out now." Back at the Alliance headquarters, Admiral Hayes stood before the council, his face grim. "New information has come to light," he announced. "Our long-range sensors have detected unusual energy readings from the Nix territory. They've activated some kind of weapon system. My fleet is taking preemptive action to neutralize the threat." "You launched an attack without council approval?" Councilor Lopez was on her feet. "I had intelligence that required immediate action," Hayes replied coolly. "The Nix have constructed a planetary-scale weapon. The longer we waited, the greater the danger to Alliance space." As the council erupted in argument, a junior officer whispered in Hayes's ear. His face darkened. "Excuse me, Council," he said. "I have an urgent matter to attend to." In his private command room, Hayes viewed the incoming transmission. His fleet. Commander's face was tight with strain. "Admiral, we have a situation. There's something else in the system. Something big, approaching from the outer rim. It's not on any of our charts." "Another Nix trick," Hayes muttered. "Sir, with all due respect, this is like nothing we've ever seen. Sir, it's eating one of our scout ships." At Horizon 9, chaos reigned as evacuation alarms blared. Susan was coordinating the loading of essential equipment when Jack, Diane, and their team burst through the doors, followed by Vexa and 3 other Nix. "What the hell are they doing here?" Susan demanded, pointing at the Nix. "They're helping us," Jack said, breathing hard from running. "The Alliance has it all wrong. The energy readings aren't a weapon. It's a defense system. There's something coming, something the Nix have faced before." Susan stared at him. "Hayes is bombing their settlement to dust as we speak. Why would they help us?" Vexa stepped forward, her massive form causing several staff members to back away. In fear, she made a series of clicks and pulses. "What affects one affects all," Jack translated. "Old enemy does not distinguish between human and Nix. All are food." Before Susan could respond, the base shook violently. Outside, the sky had turned an unnatural purple color. "They're here," Diane whispered. The next hour was a blur of terror and confusion. From space, Hayes watched in horror as strange objects rained down on Nexus 6, thousands of them, each about the size of a small car. When they hit the ground, they unfolded into something that looked like a cross between a spider and a machine. "What the hell are these things?" he demanded of his science officer. "Unknown, sir. But they're giving off energy signatures similar to the object that consumed our scout ship." Hayes made a quick decision. "All ships target those landing crafts. Full spread, all weapons." On the surface, Jack and Vexa watched the Alliance ships firing from orbit. The sky lit up with explosions, but for every spider machine destroyed, 10 more landed. "We need to get to the defense system," Jack told Susan. "It's our only chance." "How do you know it will work?" Susan asked. Jack hesitated. "Because Vexa showed me. These things, the Nix call them the Devourers. They've attacked before centuries ago. The defense system drove them off, but it needs to be recalibrated for their new adaptations." "And you trust them?" Susan's voice was sharp. "With my life," Jack said firmly. Susan looked from Jack to Vexa, then at the chaos outside where both humans and Nix were fighting side by side against the mechanical spiders. "What do you need?" she finally asked. "A direct link to Hayes," Jack said, "and a way to get back to the Nix central chamber." As they raced to prepare, Vexa approached Jack. "Need tell truth," she clicked. "Defense system. Need both." "Both what?" Jack asked. "Human and Nix. Together." Defense built by old ones for two minds working as one. Jack stared at her. What are you saying? Vexa's green eyes seemed to glow brighter. Need neural link? Your mind, my mind, join with system. Only way. Diane, who had been listening, grabbed Jack's arm. She's talking about a direct brain interface. Jack, that could kill you. If we don't stop these things, we all die anyway, Jack replied. On his flagship, Admiral Hayes watched in growing horror as the mechanical spiders tore through his ground forces. Reports were coming in from all his ships. The enemy was adapting to their weapons, developing shields that blocked Alliance energy beams. Then his communication officer called out, "Sir, incoming transmission from Horizon 9. It's Director Kelly and Preston." Hayes's face hardened, but he nodded. Put them through. Jack's face appeared on screen with Susan beside him. Behind them stood a Nyx stalker. Hayes, listen carefully, Jack said. This isn't a Nyx attack. They call them the Devourers. A kind of biomechanical hive mind that travels from system to system, consuming all life. The Nyx have fought them before. They have a defense system, but it wasn't built for their biology alone. It was designed by the original inhabitants of this planet, to be operated by two different species working together. Hayes scowled. You expect me to believe? Look at your screens, Jack shouted. Are your weapons working? These things adapt to any single species technology. The defense system works the same way. It creates a randomized energy pattern by combining two different neural patterns. The Devourers can't adapt to it. Hayes was silent for a long moment, watching as another of his ships reported critical damage. What do you need? He finally asked. The skies above Nexus 6 filled with fire as Alliance ships battled the strange vessels of the Devourer swarm. Admiral Hayes' flagship, the Intrepid, shook with each hit it took. Shields down to 42%, called out Lieutenant Kim from her station. Their weapons are adapting to our defenses. Hayes gripped the command chair tightly. In his 30 years of service, he had never seen anything like these creatures. They weren't just attacking, they were learning, changing their tactics with each passing minute. Status report on the ground team, he ordered. They've reached the Nyx central chamber, reported Commander Walters. Preston is attempting to activate the defense system as we speak. Hayes nodded grimly. Just hours ago, he had been ready to destroy all the Nyx. Now, humanity's survival might depend on them. On the surface, Jack, Diane, and Susan rushed through crystal tunnels deep beneath the northern wastes, following Vexa and two other Nyx. Behind them, they could hear the mechanical skittering of Devourer drones that had broken through the outer defenses. How much further? Susan gasped, clutching her side where a drone had grazed her with an energy beam. Close. Vexa clicked in response. Center chamber ahead. They burst into the massive room Jack had seen earlier. The machine in the center, now hummed with energy, crystals pulsing with blue light. Around it, a dozen Nyx worked frantically, connecting crystals and adjusting controls. The defense system needs power from both Nyx crystals and human technology, Jack explained as they approached. That's why it never fully activated before. Susan activated her communicator. Hayes, we're at the site. Are your engineers ready? Standing. By, came the Admiral's terse reply. But make it fast. We're losing ships up here. Working together, Alliance engineers in orbit began linking their ship systems to the transmission array the Nyx had built. On the ground, the Nyx connected crystal power conduits while Jack and Diane helped interface the two technologies. Even with both power sources, the system needs a control mechanism, Vexa explained through the translator. Needs mind link, Jack nodded, looking at the two reclined seats in front of the central column. They were clearly designed for two very different body types, one human-shaped, one Nyx-shaped. The original inhabitants of this planet and the ancient Nyx worked together, Jack said. This system was built for both species to operate simultaneously. Susan looked skeptical. You're talking about connecting your brain directly to that machine? And to a Nyx? It's the only way, Jack replied. The Devourers adapt to any single pattern of attack. The defense system works because it creates a constantly changing energy signature based on two different neural patterns working together. They can't adapt to something that's always changing. Outside, the sounds of battle grew closer. A Nyx guard rushed in, clicking urgently to Vexa. "Defenses breached," she translated. "Devourers inside upper levels." Jack turned to Susan. "We're out of time." With grim determination, Jack climbed into the human-shaped seat while Vexa positioned herself in the larger one. Diane attached neural sensors to Jack's temples and wrists. "I don't know what this will do to you," she said, her voice tight with worry. "Your brain wasn't designed for this kind of connection." "Neither was theirs," Jack said, nodding toward Vexa. "But they've been preparing for centuries." As the final connections were made, Jack felt a strange tingling throughout his body. The crystal column between him and Vexa began to glow brighter. "Hayes," Susan called over the communicator. "We're initiating the sequence. Stand by." In space, the Admiral watched as his fleet continued to take heavy damage. 3 ships had already been lost and 4 more were critically damaged. "All ships," he ordered, "prepare to channel power to the surface on my mark." A young officer approached, with a data tablet. "Sir, engineering reports that channeling that much power could overload our remaining shields. We'd be defenseless." Hayes looked at the officer for a long moment. "If this doesn't work, shields won't matter anyway." Back in the chamber, Jack felt the first jolt as the machine activated. Pain shot through his body like liquid fire. He heard himself scream, but it seemed far away. Then, suddenly, he wasn't just Jack Preston anymore. He was Vexa, feeling the cool crystal beneath her limbs, sensing the vibrations in the air that humans couldn't detect. He was the Nyx Collective, thousands of years of memories flowing through him. Their first encounter with the Devourers centuries ago, the arrival of the original inhabitants who helped them build the defense system, their years of watching and waiting as various species came and went from Nexus 6. He was the machine itself, power flowing through circuits and crystals, reaching out to the Alliance ships in orbit, connecting with them. And he could sense the Devourers, not mindless machines, but a hive intelligence driven by endless hunger, consuming world after world, adapting and evolving with each new prey they encountered. Now, he heard Susan shout, her voice echoing strangely in his connected mind. In orbit, Hayes gave the command. "All ships, channel power now." Energy surged from the Alliance ships down through the atmosphere into the crystal formations, and finally, into the ancient machine. The chamber filled with blinding light as Jack and Vex's connected minds shaped it, formed it, created patterns too complex for any single species to generate. From the Intrepid, Hayes watched in awe as beams of energy shot from the crystal formations below, striking the Devourer vessels. Unlike before, the ships didn't adapt. The energy patterns kept changing faster than they could respond. One by one, the Devourer ships began to fall, burning up in the atmosphere or drifting dead in space. "It's working," Commander Walters said in disbelief. "They're retreating." For 3 days, the battle raged. The defense system, powered by both human and Nyx technology and guided by their connected minds, pushed back the Devourer swarm. By the 4th day, the last enemy ship fled the system, badly damaged. When Jack finally disconnected from the machine, he collapsed into Diane's arms. It took him 2 more days to regain consciousness. He awoke in the medical bay of Horizon 9 to find Susan and Admiral Hayes standing at his bedside. "Welcome back," Susan said with a small smile. Jack tried to sit up. "Vexa? The Devourers?" "The Nyx are fine," Hayes said, his voice gruff, but not unkind. "Your friend Vexa recovered faster than you did. As for the Devourers, they've left the system. Long-range scans show them moving away at high speed." Jack nodded weakly. "You believed us. You helped." Hayes looked uncomfortable. "I was wrong about the Nyx. I was wrong about you. The Alliance owes you both a debt we can never repay." 2 weeks later, Jack stood with Vexa at the newly constructed meeting hall halfway between Horizon 9 and the main Nyx settlement. Representatives from both species gathered to witness something unprecedented, the signing of the Nexus Accord. The document, translated into both human language and Nix clicks, established a formal alliance between humans and the Nix. More importantly, it created a new framework for all future Alliance First Contact protocols. From this day forward, Jack read aloud, the Galactic Alliance recognizes that true intelligence may come in forms we do not initially understand, and that communication must always precede classification. As he signed his name and Vexa pressed her limb into the crystal recording device, applause broke out from the gathered humans. The Nix responded with their own form of approval, a harmonious series of clicks that made the crystals in the room vibrate gently. News of the Alliance spread quickly across the galaxy. Other species watched in disbelief as humans built joint settlements with creatures they had once feared. Alliance scientists and Nix knowledge keepers began working together, combining their technologies and perspectives. 6 months later, the first joint human-Nix expedition ship prepared to leave Nexus 6, its mission to seek out other misunderstood species and establish peaceful contact. Before boarding, Jack stood with Vexa, looking out over the blue plains where they had first met. "Did you ever imagine this would happen?" he asked her. Vexa's clicks came through the translator, which Jack hardly needed anymore after his neural connection with her. "Throughout our history, we believed true predators were those who killed without understanding. Today, we recognize that true strength lies not in the ability to take life, but in the courage to extend a hand when all instincts scream to run." As their ship rose into the sky, species throughout the galaxy began to wonder what other monsters might simply be, friends they hadn't properly met. The end.